back to another episode of More About Birth. We are here with Shannon Bennett and Angie Hansen, our hosts. And Angie, you're going to take the wheel today. So introduce your special guests.
So we're super excited to be here today. We've been looking forward to this for a long time. I have my dear friends here today. We have Dr. John Mundahl, MD, and his wife Eloise, who was a registered nurse. And we're just gonna hopefully pull as much as we can out of them in the time that we have, some stories and some information. And
I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. And the time's gonna go by too fast. But let's go ahead and get started with a little bit of personal background from the both of you. Just maybe where you met and the kids that you have, and also because it's just fascinating to me, just maybe briefly where they're living, because I know they're spread out all over the continents. And so just give us a little bit of background.
Well, I'm Eloise, and I met my husband. Actually, we met when we were 11 years old.
Oh, wow.
So this is our 50th year of marriage.
Ooh,
and
congratulations.
But when I was growing up, I was kind of bored. I had one brother and homeschooled, and it was just so boring. But I had an aunt with 9 children, and she loved children, was good with children. And she was my favorite aunt, and I wanted to have a big family like she did when I grew up someday. But one problem, I was growing up in California in that age where zero population growth. You shouldn't, best if you had no children. If you did have children, no more than 2. Well, I didn't like that very much, but I wanted children. But to find a man that wanted children. And John was one that came from a big family, and that was one thing I'd liked about him. First walked into his family, there were 8 children. There later were more. But he liked children. And he got my attention one day because I was always taking care of kids. I was changing a baby's diaper. And he was 19 years old, and he walked in the room, I was changing diaper. That's not how you fold a diaper. And that's where it really started, because it got my attention. This guy knew babies, he knew how to do things. And he knew how to take care of a baby, and he liked children. And I became a nurse, and he was going into med school, so we had similar careers there. But before we were married, I was actually, after I finished nursing, checking out midwifery schools, because I liked babies and anything that had to do with them, OB and midwifery. And I was looking into that, but then we got married. But I learned how to do childbirth classes. And when he was a doctor, I would teach childbirth classes. And I spent a lot of time, I guess you call them a doula now, but labor coaching his patients. Yeah. And some of them had had the class, and that was very helpful. Some of them had never had a class, and I'd have to sit with them contraction by contraction. But they had such a better time of it. And my philosophy is children are so important. I'm a Christian. I believe that children are a heritage of the Lord.
Yes.
And happy is the man that hath his quiver full of them. Now the quiver actually held 5 arrows.
You should have had 10, Keith.
Yeah. And I started out to think a dozen children would be nice. But houses aren't big enough, cars aren't big enough, and mom's energy isn't enough. So I wound up with 7, would have been 6, but the youngest were identical twins, which we had prayed for. My husband claimed the promise in Psalms, God will give you the desires of your heart.
Twins.
And did we need twins? No, we just wanted them. And that was our gift from God, and each child is a gift from God. And I believe if we can help families through the pregnancy, a better pregnancy, and a good birth experience, they're happier to have another child and feel better towards that child. And I just think it's very important to help mothers through the pregnancy, birth, and how to breastfeed and all those things, so that having a baby is a really happy, good experience. And help them through these things. And I really enjoyed it. And of course, it's very interesting. We were out in Minnesota for a number of years. Well, first we were in Belize, and that was very interesting. And there we had no hospital. We were building one. And babies born in that little room we had, and didn't have all the equipment a hospital would. And John and I would be the only ones for a baby. And
How fun
at that
to get to
time-
work together.
Yeah.
that I enjoyed working with him. I still like to work with him as much as I
Aw.
can. But one time we had twins, and most of these people we had not seen prenatally at all.
Hmm.
This particular mother was a nice, plump black lady, and she was in good shape physically, and she had twins. And I was able to talk to her about breastfeeding and all ahead, because down there the infant mortality rates are so high because they don't nurse the babies. They'll give them a bottle of dirty water in the morning or night and take off all day and leave babies with grandma. And
Ooh.
half the babies die. That's really sad. So I had really worked with this mom on breastfeeding and feed them every 2 hours and don't give them a bottle and all that, because the bottle was dirty water and they didn't really have formula, and a lot of the babies died and got dysentery.
It's crazy.
So this woman had these twins. Well, the first one was born, a little girl about 5 pounds. But she didn't want to breathe. She stopped breathing. And John is working on catching the second twin. I had no help. I had worked in a nursery as a student nurse, and I had learned a lot. One of the old nurses had told me, what do you do if a newborn doesn't breathe? And that came to me at that moment. You stick your little pinky in the rectum, and they gasp, and they breathe.
No kidding. They didn't teach me that in midwifery
I know.
school.
Well, that was an old nurse that taught me that. And you know, some of those experienced people can teach you these little tips. I did it.
Yeah.
That baby breathed. And then she stopped breathing again. I did it again. And the baby did just fine. You know, I think God brings to your memory what you need to do.
Yeah.
And I knew that he had that woman. It was the only time I needed to do that in my life. That woman told me that for a reason.
Yeah.
The experience. We need to share the little tips that we know with the others that are learning or share.
Boy, I could spend hours listening to those tips.
I know.
But then the baby, the Beckman was born, a brother, and he was bigger and he had no problems. Well, that woman actually listened to me, and I saw her a few months later with 2 plump, healthy babies. She had followed my advice for the nursing of them,
Nice.
and I felt rewarded.
Yeah.
And I was really gratified, and you know, that kind of thing. There's no money in it, but I just took great satisfaction in that kind of thing, and in
Yeah.
doing that for people, and to see the success of those babies.
So what made you decide to become a nurse? You had talked about midwifery school, but what?
Well,
Yeah.
I think my dad was a doctor.
Uh-huh.
My mom had taken nursing, and I was in a medical community in Southern California, and it seemed like everyone was some kind of medical person.
Yeah, it sounds
And I
like your
maybe should have
family is
thought
that
more.
way.
Yeah. I should have thought more about it maybe, but I did enjoy nursing. I became an operating room nurse, and then I've worked in OB quite a bit,
Mm-hmm.
and I've worked in the office. In nursing, it's a people job, and
Yeah.
I like people. And I like being a blessing to people.
It's awesome.
That's great. Yeah. So I want to hear a little bit more about, okay, so we heard a little bit about what got you into nursing. Let's hear a little bit from Dr. Mundal about what got you into medical school, and then how that transitioned. Like, what was your first job? What were your first experiences, and how that got you into doing births?
Well, my first memories of life are being in a hospital,
Really?
really. I had polio when I was 2.5 years old, and I
Oh.
developed atrophy of one leg from that. So I was very close to having to put in an iron lung. And
Wow.
my parents prayed, and God saw fit to preserve my life. But it was that close. That was an epidemic, I think, of 1950, thereabouts. There was a lot of polio going around. My father was a physician as well. So anyways, from the time I was 6 years old, I was saying, when I grow up, I'm going to be a doctor. That was just, and I never turned back from that goal. So it was just that way all the way through. I was pursuing that. I did high school in most of 3 years. I did all my college requirements in 3 years
Wow.
to get into medical school. Then medical school made me wait an extra year. So I went and took physical therapy, anatomy course, and got a little extra grounding there. So then I went into medicine after that. So Then after that, since my dad was a doctor, he was actually physician and surgeon. He had enough experience to be a general surgeon. So he did a lot of that. And of course, he did his own C-sections and all that, which I never did get into doing. But anyway, when I was in medical school, he moved down to Belize. He got the idea he wanted to start just work down there for the natives and start a hospital himself, single-handed. So he went and got his truck driver's license. He bought a couple 18-wheelers. He bought a cat and a bulldozer, a backhoe and all this stuff, loaded on the flatbed on one. Got another one, had a moving van, and got some crew. And they drove all those down through Mexico, the entire length of Mexico down to Belize. And he went down there and bought a piece of, actually just rented a little house for a while, but then he bought a piece of the jungle, cleared it all, and then landscaped it and built
Bought a piece of jungle.
Right?
Yeah. And literally, it was just,
That's
it's all
amazing.
jungle. And if you don't keep it chopped down, it just grows right back
Oh,
up.
yeah.
So I forget how many acres they got, maybe 20 acres or something like that. And he built that hospital, 20,000 square foot, 2-story hospital,
Wow.
inch by inch. Now, while he was doing that, he wasn't just idle as a physician. He wanted to treat the people who were sick there. So he had 2 little travel trailers. One was a Travelese 25-foot travel trailer. One of them became his clinic. And in one room in there, people just walk in the door of that travel trailer, and that's where he would treat them. And then the other one was his laboratory. He had his microscope and things set up there to do simple testing. So that's how he operated for
Let's go.
I know, right?
3 years or 4 years until he got the hospital built.
Wow.
And every morning, the natives would all line up, maybe 50 of them in a line there, and just wait their turn until they were seen that day. And just steady stream.
And you went with him? Were you married at that point, or what was the time
We got
frame?
married about the time he moved down to Belize in my freshman year of medical school.
Okay.
And then, so then when I finished medical school, I took my internship in El Paso, Texas for a year, where I got a lot of experience with Spanish, because that's what, and lots of experience with deliveries.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
This was a border town, and a lot of the wetbacks, as we called them back in that era, they would run across the border and walk around the parking lot until they could tell they were about in transition phase. They'd walk into ER, and then the ER doctor had to decide, do we have the 10 minutes necessary to throw them in an ambulance and run them back to Mexico so the baby's born there, or do we have to run them upstairs and deliver them here, let them have a U.S. citizen in the family?
Yep.
Wow.
So that was the game the ER got to play every day. But it was a busy ER and also busy L&D.
So how many deliveries did you do while you were there? Just an estimate.
Boy.
8 or 9 a night sometimes.
Yeah, I had 9 in one
Crazy.
night one time.
Crazy.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. Usually maybe 3 or 4 a night or whatever, but it was.
And how long did you work there?
I worked there for a year, but I was only in labor and delivery probably a couple of months or so, because I was at a rotating insurance,
Yeah.
so I did a lot of other
It's
things.
a lot of
to get more
deliveries,
experience.
though, in a,
A lot
short
of
amount of
deliveries,
time.
yeah. Fortunately, the time there was 9, they were all the same gender, so at least it made it easy
Wow.
on the birth certificates.
Documenting.
Did you have to fill out the birth certificates?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Whoever
Crazy.
delivers fills out the birth certificate. Don't you do that too?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
in the hospitals, the doctor doesn't do it
Yeah.
nowadays.
Really?
Admin does it.
Oh, really? No, I did.
Yeah.
We did our own. We had to, well, they may have put some of the details on, but I know we had to put some of the information.
Right,
the
right.
date, height, weight, and whatever length, weight, and
Right.
then sign them and all. So, yeah.
That's actually a good question. I'm going to have to ask some of the doctors I've worked with how that works,
Hmm.
like what part they play in that now.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Hadn't thought about it. Okay.
So I got a lot of good experience there. And then after that year, I moved down to Belize my dad had been practicing for a number of years by then. I wanted to kind of learn from him what his,
Mm-hmm.
experience had taught him about medicine in general. So it was a great experience to work together there for a
How
time.
fun.
Wow.
And it was also, it's a subtropics there, so we had cases of malaria, rare but some.
Mm-hmm.
Our bread and butter was intestinal parasites. That was just everyday stuff. Measles
I
was
don't know if those two words
endemic.
go together. Bread and butter and parasites.
Measles was endemic, so we saw cases of that every day. And so
Wow.
was whooping cough. It was
It's
just,
a different world.
and the kids would get whooping cough, and they would, have fever, cough, and cold, and throwing up. And this would last for 6 weeks to 6 months. A lot of times it was, if they survived. A lot of kids were so malnourished they just didn't have what it took to survive it even.
Mm.
So,
Wow. Wow, that's intense. Okay, well, we are going to go to just a real short break here, and we're going to hear more about Belize and delivering babies when we come back.
Yay.
Well, welcome back to More About Birth. I am here with Shannon Bennett and Angie Hansen, and we have very special doctor guests with us today. So, Angie, what are we going to learn this second half?
All right, so we are just going to hear some more, whatever you guys want to share about your time in Belize, birth stories, things that you learned medically, and maybe some of the other areas that you did a lot of births in. So whatever order you want to go in, whatever comes to mind is fine.
Well, after a year or so in Belize, where I learned a lot of, like I said, tropical medicine and primitive things, it was a real challenge because it was just basically grassroots medicine, and what we had to offer was better than what else they would have had without us. So you just did whatever you had to do and got by with it most of the time.
Did y'all do any surgeries? I just have to
We did.
interrupt and ask. Yeah, like what kind of surgeries and what was
Well,
that like?
In that culture, there aren't too many lawnmowers, but people do have some patches of grass in their yards. And so how do they mow it?
Oh, no.
With machetes.
No.
And so every once in a while, the machete misses its mark and hits the wrist.
Oh,
And so then
great.
what happens? Well, if it's the wrong spot, the tendons get cut and they
Yeah.
all pull up. So here we are, people come in with that, and then you have to try to use your instruments and fish those tendons back up and try to sew them back together. So we would do this in that travel trailer. That's all we had. And for
That
operating
sterile
lights,
environment.
sterile environments, operating light we had was the sunshine. We just let the sun come through the doorway, leave the door open. And we'd have it there. And while we were working on the wound, the flies would land and crawl around and this sort of thing.
Oh.
We'd tug on the tendons and didn't have general anesthetic, so we just patients have to put up with the pain, and we just pull it together with local anesthetic, sew them back together. I did 2 or 3 of those tendon repairs like that.
Ew.
Interestingly, there was never an infection in any of them, no
Wow.
post-op infections.
Seriously.
No.
It was those flies, right?
Probably.
One of them I'll never forget. I'm 7 months pregnant. I just come from Loma Linda University Hospital, heart surgeries. I was a scrub nurse and circulating nurse there. And everything is sterile,
Oh, yeah.
clean, no flies,
Right.
sterile technique.
Yeah.
And there I am helping with this man's cut arm with the tendons cut. Now, if we just told him I was sending him home, he'd been useless. No, he could never work again.
Yeah.
Lost use of his arm. It was our doing something or not. Here I am, 7 months pregnant, sitting on the exam table with this patient, assisting John with his surgery. And the
having a
natives,
visual.
the natives are all looking in the windows at us, see what we're doing in there.
No kidding.
And
Wow.
it was as sterile as we could. I mean, our instruments were sterile, but we didn't have that sterile field. And I just thinking, oh, if the people at the hospital I worked at could see me
They'd
now,
die.
they'd think I hadn't learned a thing.
All right.
But
Oh,
the
my.
good thing was we finally got those tendons back together. That man was able to return to working
Wow.
again.
That's incredible.
And even though it was very difficult and not what we were trained to do, the way we were trained to do it, you still have to say, we have to pray and God has to help us. We're there to help the people the best we can.
Yeah.
What
And-
did you do as far as disinfecting things? Did you use like alcohol, hydrogen
Yeah,
peroxide?
we had
what
some,
did you
we had
have?
some betadine, I think, for
Uh-huh.
painting.
We
wounds
had
and stuff like that.
sterilizer machines too. We had a sterilizer.
But it was very primitive. My father had essentially no economic support except what he had earned in the States. He was spending
Yeah.
that down. This is, 50 years ago now, but he invested $250,000 into that project. But anyway, the people would come in for the medicine we'd give them. We'd buy antibiotics and stuff from the States. And then we would sell the antibiotic for basically what it cost us.
Right.
So the average office visit there was maybe $3, and that's Bailey's money, which is $1.50 US. That's what we're working for.
If they had that much.
So we had to be frugal, which meant we were frugal.
It was missions work. It was totally from
mission
the
work.
heart. Yeah.
When we use a tongue blade on some of them, we would wash it, autoclave it, and reuse
Yeah.
it. When we used 4x4s, we would wash all the blood out of them, autoclave them, and
Really?
reuse them.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's intense.
Wow, that's labor intensive.
We made everything work. Syringes, we rinse those out. It's hard to autoclave syringes, but the glass ones we could autoclave
Yeah.
and reuse. Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And the infection rates were low.
Almost-
Man, well, I guess God blesses what
He
done from the heart, right?
Yeah, what's our extremity is his opportunity.
Wow.
Wow.
And God cares about everybody in the world, not just us here in the United States.
I would love to go do something like that.
And that hospital is still in operation to this
Is
day.
it?
Yeah.
It's a nice hospital. It's a nice
Let's
hospital
go,
now.
Angie. Let's
Wow,
go.
That's
It's
wild.
fun. We were just down there. When was the last time? 5 years ago, or maybe one.
Let's do
closer
it
to 8 or
when
10.
your kids are bigger.
Sometimes you need an introduction. There's your introduction to go visit a hospital.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
It's in
Well,
West.
it's a
Crazy.
well government approved hospital.
In fact, they actually have a dialysis unit at that hospital now.
Wow.
See, you've come
Yeah.
a long
Wow.
way from that patch of jungle you
Yeah.
purchased.
Yeah, no kidding. Wow.
And that's the most people in the area. You can only go to your local district hospital to have your baby.
Mhm.
But the La Luz Hospital in Belize, a woman can come from any part of the country, and the government will pay for it to have her baby there.
Amazing.
It's recognized as a
It's a
good
private
hospital.
hospital, but it's
Are there a lot of home births in Belize? I
Well,
mean,
with-
nowadays?
I don't know that answer nowadays. I would think there's some. Don't know about the. There was a large Mennonite colony. I don't know if they do home births there, although they didn't have any midwives when we were there that I'm aware of.
They didn't.
Most of the rest of it is basically local natives that have basically either Hispanic or Black or combination background, Mayan, Indian, and so forth. Several languages spoken in that area.
Man, mentioned
Yeah,
something.
go ahead.
When we were there in
Great.
1975, the local hospital, now Belize has improved tremendously since then, as we discovered. But at that time, the local government hospital, if you were going to have a baby, they'd put you on the delivery room and they'd put a bell on your toe. Now ring the bell when the baby comes.
Oh, just have the baby on your own. And
And so
Wow.
one woman they left her, she had her
We
baby,
could try
but
it.
they were twins. And you heard these horror stories, and people did not want to go to that hospital to have their baby. They wanted to come to us, even if it was the little room in our house to have a baby, because it was much better care.
crazy.
Yeah. So you did do a handful of deliveries in Belize then,
Oh, quite a number.
or a
yeah.
lot.
Yeah, fair number. I don't think I kept count, but anyways, there was every now and then.
But
Yeah.
apparently, most
Okay.
of the deliveries you guys did was in Montana,
In Minnesota.
Minnesota. Okay.
Yeah, after we
I
got
got
warmed
the
up in
M
the
right.
tropics, we went to Minnesota to get cooled off. And
Okay.
it worked.
There's another interesting case from Belize I'd like to mention.
Yeah.
I used to go, he'd have me check the women, see where they were, because he had a busy clinic all day. If someone came in labor, see where they were, and,
Right.
how much time he had. So this one woman, I went to get the dilatation and all that. And this is odd. There's something wrong here. It's a hand presentation or something. I don't know what it is. So I said, you got to check this one. There's a young woman of 20 with her 5th baby, each one by a different
tickled.
father. And there was no common there. We had one boy come in, his mother, 12 kids, and she couldn't remember all the last names, but the boy did. The oldest boy knew who they all were.
Wow.
But this woman, so I said, you got to check this girl. It was not a malpresentation. It was a tumor.
Oh.
So he said to her, he said, okay, I want to see you back here in 6 weeks. I want you to be sure to come back. Because most of the time they just didn't show up again for, postpartum checks.
So she had delivered the baby and there was still a tumor.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, there was. It
Mass
wasn't
on the
right.
cervix.
Cervical tumor.
Wow.
So you want to check it, a few weeks postpartum. So she did not come back at 6 weeks. It was several months. But John had looked at her face to remember who this girl was.
Mm-hmm.
And so she came back, and sure enough, it wasn't good. So we sent her, we didn't have a hospital yet. We couldn't do any surgeries. He sent her to the government hospital in Bailey City. Her 5 kids, she farmed out to the Mennonites. They took the kids. And they wound up raising them. And we went to see her in the hospital, I think a few months, about that time we came back to the U.S. Bailey's, the government hospital, did not do anything for this girl. They let her wait till she died. Because she would have had to pay $20 to have a surgery.
$20.
No government help. And we didn't realize this till later. We'd give her the $20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they
Wow.
just let this young 20-year-old woman die. Cervical cancer
so
was a
sad.
bigger problem there because of the multiple partners
Mhm.
starting so young.
Mhm.
Mm. Wow.
We are so blessed here. Wow.
Wow, yeah, that's amazing. So how did you get from Belize to Minnesota?
You want to tell that?
That's an hour-long story.
Oh boy.
Can you make it 5 minutes?
I'm going to try.
She's going to talk really fast.
I got really sick down there. I was really sick. And so we had to come back to the States. So he worked emergency room in California for a while so we could earn a little money because we were kind of volunteers down there. So we were looking for a place to go, and he was interested in North Dakota. But they didn't have any openings in North Dakota, but there were openings in Minnesota. So we took a little tour looking around, and we picked a place in Minnesota. And it was going to be a place there, and we were going to move there. Well, we went back to Belize, but on the way, we had come through a little town and said, you need a doctor? You have a doctor? No. Well, they got a hospital board together in Bertha, Minnesota, real fast, 10 minutes, and they really wanted us to come. They asked my husband where he went to med school, Loma Linda University. Loma Linda, well, we want you right now. They were real excited, but we had already decided at the end of our trip, we were going to go to this other place. We went back to Belize to get our stuff. And that town of Bertha sent us 2 letters, which we did not respond to at all because we weren't going there. But they really wanted us. And we went back, and traveling back to the place we were going to go, we hit Kansas, New Year's, and it was 40 below zero in Kansas. And we
40
called and we
below.
said, we're arriving at our destination,
Wow.
Minnesota, here in 2 days. The deal had fallen through.
What?
And here we are in
And you're on your
Kansas,
way.
40 below zero, January, with 3 little boys. And so we called Bertha. Do you still want it? Yes, yes. If you can find us a house, we'll be there in 2 days. Oh, we'll get you a house because you can't stay outside in 40 below zero very long. And lo and behold, they had 2 furnished houses. And it's amazing. This is God. On the way there, I realized we'd only brought back what we could bring back in our van. I didn't have bedding and all that. We didn't have furniture. I said, God, it's cold. We need a house, not only furnished, but it needs to have bedding. How often do you rent a house with bedding?
Yeah.
Wow.
Or
They had
even
2
furniture.
houses for us with bedding, complete with quilts, pillows, everything we needed. God is good. And God,
Wow.
I feel like God brought us to that place.
Wow.
This has reminded me of that book, House Calls and Hitching
Yeah,
Posts.
yeah.
Have you guys read that book?
What book is it?
House Calls and Hitching Posts.
No.
It's about a small town doctor, and this is just sounding so familiar. I'm gonna have to get you guys a copy of that.
I'd be
Yeah.
interested, yes.
Yeah.
It's good.
I'd be interested, yes.
Good
But
book.
God, we just feel like we pray and we ask God to help us. He directs as to where we should
Yes.
Mm.
Yes.
I love it.
So thanks for joining us. I know that you're probably just baited to hear more because this was so good. So we will come back with Dr. Mandal and his beautiful wife, and you'll get to hear more. Thanks for joining us.
Well, it's another episode of More About Birth. Thank you so much for joining us. Check it out on More About Birth on YouTube, as well as many audio podcast locations. We'll see you here next time.